large Phillips, small Phillips, 1/4 inch drive ratchet, 8mm and 10mm sockets, a 3 or 6 inch extension, flat tip screwdriver large, small screwdriver, small enough to get inside the carburetor. You'll see that later on. Needle nose pliers or some tweezers, really small needle nose pliers, a 10mm wrench, and an 8mm wrench. These are the tools that you'll need to perform these jobs. Also, some carburetor cleaner, and if you can find it, a aerosol dust remover can. These two things, this is very important, and this is going to make things a lot easier for you. So if you have those two things shipped in before you start tearing this down, that would be the best. You can use brake cleaner instead of carb cleaner if you have to. Just make sure it's nice and dried out before you put everything back together. Alright, so we keep having calls about problems with generators running right, so I'll make this video to show you guys how to overhaul the carburetor. I think it's a fuel delivery problem that everyone's having, and some of you aren't so confident on doing a carb overhaul by yourself, so hopefully this will help you walk through it, and then you can email me if you have any other questions. So first off, you're going to take off your air filter. You're going to need an 8mm ratchet socket and a flathead screwdriver. Remove your cover. Remove your two filters. Make sure your air filters are clean. That's going to cause you similar problems if you have dirty air filters as fuel problems. Remove these three bolts. One bolt, two nuts. One's holding the carburetor, the air cleaner box to the carburetor. The other one is inside the air filter box. Will be a long bolt there. You will need to remove this hose as well. Be careful not to tear it. Just pry gently until it comes out. Set your filter aside. Keep your hardware close to it so you don't get confused what stuff goes to it. And pull each of these off. They're pretty self-explanatory of where they go due to length, but if you want to mark them, you can. Next, we're going to remove the fuel lines. You can make sure your fuel's shut off up on top of the carburetor. There'll be one fuel line, or on top of the filler cap. There'll be one fuel line there. And then your carburetor itself is out. Now on top of the carburetor is an electric motor that adjusts your engine speed for idle and for your economy. This may also be a problem, but since I'm having similar issues with all of them, I know at least 4 for sure and more generators right now that are having a problem. I'm not sure if this is it. I'm gonna do some more testing on this, but right now we'll just show you how to do a carburetor overhaul. So go ahead and remove this motor. There'll be 2 Phillips screws here. You can take those 2 screws out to get the motor out. Before you take this electric motor off, take note right here, there's a tiny spring. If this spring will shoot out when you take the two screws out. So if you're doing this on the grass, you're going to lose the spring and you're going to be very frustrated. So make sure you lay a cloth down or do it inside where you can't lose the spring. So there you see your spring. It goes on this little black knob here, and when you put the carburetor back together, I'll show you how to get that spring back in. For now, let's set that aside. And double check, make sure you have no cracks in your gasket anywhere around here or in the gasket here on the engine. Any air that can get in there is going to cause you problems later. So take your number 10 wrench and take the bottom bolt off of the float. Inside this bowl, which I have a feeling you guys are going to have problems with as well, you can see there's a lot of crud. This is just dirt. Dirt, water, varnish is going to be a big problem with a lot of your cheaper fuels that you guys have, and so you're going to have to be careful to clean this out really well. Now this screw here on the bottom of the bowl is a drain, and you can just unscrew this. Normally you would unscrew this to drain any water or junk out of the fuel tank or out of the bowl that comes from the fuel tank. Feel free to clean that every once in a while. It would be a good idea. Your fuel drain lines that come down off your carburetor here, they drain right out of this little hole at the bottom. If you're going to drain your carburetor, put a little cup or dish or something underneath there to catch the fuel that comes out, and then you can actually inspect it and see if there's water or junk in the fuel. And make sure not to lose these parts. Set them aside. I'm going to pull this gasket off very carefully. Again, you don't want to tear this gasket in any way. So I want to move it away so I don't have to worry about ripping it. Now you'll also, this one here has problems. There's some dirt there on the choke valve. That's in itself not a problem, but it's letting me know that there's been junk in here. This butterfly valve is your throttle. If this one's dirty, that's going to be more of a problem. So you want to make sure that this is really clean, and I wouldn't recommend pulling this out unless we have to. So right now, looking at this, it doesn't look like it has to come out, so we're gonna try to do this without pulling it apart. Alright, your next step is going to be to remove the float inside the carburetor. So simply pull this little hinge pin out. Again, be very careful not to lose this part. And then pull straight up on the bowl. There's going to be your needle here, and it's hooked with a small spring and hooked right into here. If you slide it out to towards the larger hole, you can pull it off, but then you lose the spring. So try to keep it on there, not mess with it. What you want to check here is that there's no tear in this little rubber nipple thing. This is your seat. If there's a tear in it, it's not going to seal properly and fuel's going to keep flowing into the carburetor. So just very carefully pick it with your fingernail, very gently, and make sure the rubber isn't torn or whatever. Now inside here you're going to have your main jet, and you want to pull this out. You want to make sure you use the right size screwdriver to fit down in there and unscrew that. If it's too wide, it's going to score up the threads inside here. If it's too little, you're not going to be able to grip on it inside on both sides of the screw, and you're going to strip it out, and then you're in big trouble. So make sure you have the right size screwdriver to get down in there. This is screwed down tight. You don't need to worry about counting your turns as it comes out, because when you put it back in, you're going to screw it all the way down. Alright, in this main jet, you can see maybe there's a little bit of varnish in there from fuel sitting. This is pretty minor. If your orifice here, you should be able to see light through the little hole. If you can't see light, or you can tell that the hole's smaller than it should be, I'm thinking that this is your biggest problem, and you can damage this by poking things through it that aren't the right size. So I would recommend, if you have some sort of carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner, you could spray this and get it off. If you don't, you can leave it for 6 to 8, 12 hours in some Coke, and the Coca-Cola will eat all that varnish off, just like it eats away the lining of your stomach. Alright, once you get that jet out, inside of this there'll be another jet that goes all the way down the length of it. In order to get it out, I used a can of CO2 duster stuff, and this orifice here, not the one inside but the one on the outside, and this is the end with the choke on it. I just blew a little air in there and it pushed up the jet here. So with some tweezers I can pull out that jet out of there. Now again, you're probably going to have varnish here on the very tip of it, and if this hole gets smaller than it's supposed to be, it's not going to run right. You also have all these small holes along the side that can't be plugged up with anything either, and you need to make sure that you can see light through those holes. I don't know if you can see in here, probably not, but you should be able to see light through the holes. And again, stick this in with your jet when you're cleaning the parts. If you don't have brake cleaner or carb cleaner would work the best to eat away all this stuff. Alright, now that we got the other parts cleaned up, take your cleaner and you can spray in this little hole right here inside the choke side of the carburetor, and you should see cleaner come out of these holes inside here. There's 3 tiny little holes in the back and a larger one here in the front. So when you spray this, there should be fuel coming out of all those, or cleaner coming out all 4 holes. So you know that those are not plugged up. Now you've pretty much cleaned everything out that you need to clean, so we can start putting back together. Long jet, and take the smaller side and put it into your carburetor here. This end will be flat, and just go ahead and drop it in. Take your jet here, cleaned jet, place it in. And then screw it down and snug it up. You don't have to make it super tight, but you don't want this thing vibrating out. You'll know if it vibrates out because your engine will shut off. Alright, next we're going to put your float on. Make sure your needle is, everything is where it should be. Slide your float, slide the needle down into the thing, and then put your hinge pin in. And once it's inside the bowl, the hinge pin is unable to slide out, but as it is now, it slides pretty freely. Make sure your O-ring is seated for your bowl. You can put it on your bowl, or it's supposed to be seated in this little lip here. And then make sure your drain comes out the choke side. Snug this up. Doesn't need to be very tight, just tight enough to keep the fuel from leaking out. Put your drain in. And then we're ready to put the electric motor back on. Alright, this black plastic on your motor is going to fit down into the black plastic notch on your throttle. The easiest way to do this is to take your little spring and put it on here, balance it on the black plastic right there, and then slide it down into the plastic piece, and make sure that the bolts are able to be screwed in. You can see here that the spring isn't seated down, it's kind of pushed off, but it's going to be easier if you can tighten down the screws. And once they're kind of snugged up, take a small screwdriver and just kind of squeeze it down and work it down into the plastic part there. So then it's seated right down and moves along with it, and it gives a little bit of shock absorption. So there you go. Slide it on. Make sure it goes the right way, so none of the holes are plugged up with gasket material. Put your fuel line on. Your vent. Might be easier to take the clip off the carburetor, slide the vent in. It's kind of a tight fit. There you go. Now you're ready for your airbox. Go ahead, put your airbox on. Don't forget the big rubber tube. Slide it over the carburetor. You snug these up pretty well so that the air can't get between the gasket and the seal, the seat of the airbox. If there's too much air in there, it's going to mess up your mixture ratio. And you're set.